Jump scares, cursed dolls, demon nuns, creepy kids, this franchise has pretty much thrown it all at us. And with 10 years of haunted house horror under its belt, the Conjuring Universe has become one of the biggest modern horror franchises out there. But which films actually hold up and which ones feel more like filler? Today I'm ranking every single entry from worst to best. Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. In this video, I'll be ranking all 9 films of the Conjuring universe. What started back in 2013 with James Wan's The Conjuring has since grown into a full-blown cinematic universe complete with spin-offs, prequels, sequels, and now what's being marketed as the 10th and final film of Phase 1, The Conjuring Last Rites. The franchise is loosely, very loosely, based on the real-life supernatural case files of Ed and Lorraine Warren. Of course, the movies take plenty of liberties to amp up the scares and give us a more cinematic experience. And with Last Rites dropping tomorrow, I decided to go back and binge watch all 9 films leading up to it. Some held up better than I remembered, others not so much. But that's part of the fun, right? So here's my full ranking of the Conjuring Universe films, from the weakest to the strongest. Before we get started, don't forget to hit that like button if you enjoy horror content, subscribe if you want to see my review of Last Rites tomorrow, and comment down below with your own Conjuring Universe ranking. I'm curious to see how yours stacks up against mine. Starting things off at the very bottom, we've got Annabelle. John Form thinks he's found the perfect gift for his pregnant wife Mia, a beautiful vintage doll, but after a terrifying home invasion by devil worshippers, the doll becomes a conduit for a demon, and soon the couple realizes they've welcomed pure evil into their home. Now I'll give credit where it's due. The opening home invasion scene is actually pretty intense. It sets up this sort of Manson family style brutality that feels grounded and disturbing, but the movie doesn't capitalize on that. Instead, it settles into this very bland haunted house routine that we've all seen 100 times before. The biggest sin here is that the doll, the whole reason this movie even exists, isn't used in an interesting way. Half the time the camera just lingers on her while we're waiting for something to happen. The demon itself is creepy in design, but it barely shows up, and when it does, it's usually in rushed CGI heavy sequences that lack punch. It also doesn't help that the characters are paper thin. Mia and John are likable enough, but they're basically just stock new parents in peril. By the time things pick up in the third act, it's too little too late. This should have been terrifying, but it feels more like a generic cash grab, easily the weakest in the whole franchise. Coming in at number 8, we've got The Curse of La Llorona. Set in 1970s Los Angeles, the film follows social worker Anna and her 2 children as they're targeted by the vengeful spirit La Llorona, a woman cursed to wander the earth weeping for her lost children. To survive, Anna turns to a former priest who's now a mystic healer. The one thing this film has going for it is La Llorona's design. When she's just quietly lurking in the background, she's chilling. Her soaked dress, her long black hair, the crying, it's all very unsettling. The film takes what should be an incredibly rich piece of folklore and strips it down to a by-the-numbers ghost story. The scares get repetitive fast. La Llorona opens her mouth, screams, lunges towards the camera. We've seen it so many times that it loses all impact. By the midway point, you know exactly what's coming every time. Then there are the kids. Look, I get that kids in horror movies sometimes make bad decisions, but here they're constantly doing the dumbest possible thing. Unlocking doors, running outside alone, hiding in places where they're clearly cornered. Instead of feeling scared for them, you end up frustrated with them. And unlike the better entries in this franchise, this one doesn't feel very tied into the larger story in any meaningful way. The inclusion of Father Perez from Annabelle feels like it was thrown in at the last second just to justify calling it a Conjuring spinoff. Honestly, if you skip this one entirely, you wouldn't miss a thing. And coming in at number 7, we've got The Nun. After a nun in Romania takes her own life, the Vatican sends a priest and a novitiate to investigate. They uncover a demonic presence in the abbey, Valak, the demon who would go on to become one of the most recognizable villains in the Conjuring universe. I'll be honest, when this came out, I thought it was going to be the movie that revitalized the franchise. Valak had been terrifying in The Conjuring 2, and a gothic abbey in Romania is the perfect setting. But instead, what we got was a movie that relied almost entirely on cheap, predictable jump scares. Here's the formula. A character explores a dark hallway, something moves in the background, the music quiets down, and bam, Valak's face lunges at the screen with a loud sting. That's it, over and over. There's very little tension, no slow build, no real sense of dread. The lore could have been fascinating, exploring how Valak came to take this form or why this abbey in particular is tied to its presence, but the film only scratches the surface, and unfortunately the heavy CGI really undermines Valak's menace. Compare that to the practical makeup effects in The Conjuring 2 and the difference is night and day. The only real highlight is how it ties back into the first Conjuring at the very end, connecting Valak to the Warrens. But getting there is a slog. It's a film with great potential that just doesn't deliver. Coming in at 6th place is The Nun 2. Taking place in 1956 France, Sister Irene once again finds herself battling Valak as the demon leaves a trail of death in its wake. With the Vatican calling her back into action, she faces a final confrontation with the entity she thought she had defeated. This one improves on the first, at least in atmosphere. The magazine stand scare, where the pages flip one by one until Valak's figure is revealed, is one of the most creative moments in the entire franchise. It's genuinely clever, but unfortunately it's followed by the same old formula of Valak jumping out and screaming at the camera. There are some attempts at expanding the lore, with hints that Valak might be a fallen angel. That could have been fascinating, but the film barely touches it. Instead, it gets bogged down in side characters we don't really care about and spends too much time setting up sequences that don't pay off. On the plus side, the bloodier moments give this film a little more edge than its predecessor. And I do like that Irene is shown to be stronger, more seasoned compared to the first film. But overall, Valak is still a one-trick pony here, and that's frustrating because this character should be terrifying. But now we're getting into the good stuff. At number 5, we've got Annabelle Creation. A grieving couple opens their home to a nun and a group of orphan girls years after their daughter's death. But when one of the girls discovers Annabelle locked away, the evil within the doll is unleashed. This film does what the first Annabelle should have done. It's actually scary. The setup with the orphanage and the creaky old house is perfect for building tension. The scares are creative, like the sequence where the paralyzed girl is trapped in her chair as the demon creeps closer. There's real suspense instead of just noise. What I also appreciate is the way the movie ties back into the first Annabelle. It feels purposeful, not just tacked on. You see how the evil spread and why the doll ended up where it did. It makes the franchise feel more interconnected. This film also doesn't shy away from being meaner than you'd expect. The violence is surprisingly brutal in moments and the tone is way darker. It feels closer in spirit to James Wan's style of horror, using atmosphere, timing, and character investment to make the scares land. Is it perfect? No. The pacing slows a bit in the middle and the kids aren't always the most compelling characters, but compared to what came before, this was a massive improvement. Coming in at number 4, and this one may be a little controversial, The Conjuring: The Devil Made Me Do It. Based on the infamous real-life case, the film follows Arnie Johnson, who became the first person in US history to claim demonic possession as a defense for murder. Ed and Lorraine Warren investigate, uncovering a broader satanic conspiracy at play. Now, I know a lot of fans consider this the weakest of the main trilogy, but honestly, I kind of love the direction it took. Instead of another haunted house story, it leans into a supernatural procedural. It's got elements of a detective thriller mixed with courtroom drama, and that gives it a fresh vibe compared to the previous entries. What really makes this work for me are the Warrens themselves. Ed's heart condition is a great way to raise the stakes. It makes him physically vulnerable in a way we haven't seen before, and Lorraine's visions are used in interesting cinematic ways that keep the mystery moving. The horror set pieces aren't quite as memorable as in the first two, I'll admit, but I appreciate that the movie tries something different, and the quieter character moments between Ed and Lorraine are some of the best in the series. Their relationship grounds all the supernatural chaos, and this movie leans into that beautifully. For me, it's not top tier Conjuring, but it's far from a disappointment. Alright, now we're getting into the top 3, and in 3rd place, I've got Annabelle Comes Home. The Warrens lock Annabelle in their artifact room to contain her evil, but when she awakens the other cursed objects, their daughter Judy, her babysitter Mary Ellen, and Mary Ellen's friend Daniela are forced to survive a night surrounded by unleashed spirits. This movie is just a blast. It's basically a haunted house attraction brought to life on screen. Every room has a different scare, every cursed object brings its own flavor, and it keeps you guessing which entity will pop up next. What I love most is that it finally gives the artifact room the spotlight. That room has always been one of the most intriguing parts of the franchise, and seeing all the cursed items get their moment is so much fun. The ferryman, the samurai armor, the werewolf, there are so many directions future spin-offs could go based on this setup. It also gives the Warrens more screen time than most of the spin-offs, which is always a win in my book. And shifting the focus to Judy is a great move. McKenna Grace does a fantastic job, and the movie does a good job of making you care about her and the babysitters. Sure, it's not the scariest entry, it's a little lighter and more playful in tone, but it knows exactly what it wants to be and it delivers. I had a ton of fun with this one. Now coming in at number 2, we've got the film that started it all, The Conjuring. The Warrens investigate the Perrin family's farmhouse, which is haunted by the spirit of Bathsheba, a witch who cursed the land generations earlier. This movie was a game changer. James Wan took a familiar setup, the haunted house story, and elevated it with masterful direction. The scares are crafted with such precision. Take the hide and clap sequence. On paper it's so simple, but the way it's staged and timed makes it so unforgettable. Bathsheba might not be as flashy as Valak, but she's terrifying in her own right. The reveal on top of the wardrobe still gives me chills. What makes this movie special though is the humanity. The parents feel like a real family, and Ed and Lorraine feel like genuine people who care. That warmth gives the scares weight because you're invested in the characters. And unlike most haunted house movies, this one doesn't end in tragedy. There's hope, and that makes it stand out even more. It's not just a great horror movie, it's a great movie period. And finally, my number 1 pick, The Conjuring 2. Ed and Lorraine travel to London to help the Hodgson family, whose young daughter Janet is showing signs of possession. But they soon realize she's being manipulated by a darker entity, Valak, the demon nun. This movie takes everything great about the first Conjuring and expands it. The scares are bigger and bolder, the emotional core is even stronger, and James Wan pulls out all the stops with his direction. The Crooked Man sequence is one of the highlights, not just of this film, but of the entire franchise. It's surreal, imaginative, and unforgettable, and Valak is used perfectly here. Unlike the Nun spin-offs, Valak feels dangerous and terrifying every time she appears. I also love the twist that the old man's ghost haunting the house isn't the true threat. It's just a puppet being controlled by Valak. It's clever, it's creepy, and it raises the stakes beautifully. But above all, it's the human moments that shine. Ed singing Can't Help Falling in Love to calm the family down. It's cheesy on paper, but in the movie it's pure heart. That warmth makes the horror even more effective because you genuinely care about everyone involved. For me, The Conjuring 2 is the peak of this franchise. It's the perfect blend of heart and horror, and it's the one I always recommend to anyone who hasn't seen these movies. So that's my ranking of all 9 Conjuring Universe films. Overall, I'd say I enjoy more of them than I don't. Even the weaker entries are at least watchable, if not especially memorable. What really holds this franchise together are Ed and Lorraine Warren, the cinematic versions anyway, who bring so much heart to the series. Are the movies particularly scary? Not really. They're more like funhouse rides, loud, jolting, entertaining experiences, but they're consistently well acted, and when they work, they really work. But that's just my list. What's yours? Let me know in the comments down below. I want to hear where you'd rank each movie. And don't miss my review of The Conjuring Last Rites, which drops tomorrow. And before you go, if you enjoyed this video, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss future reviews and rankings. And if you'd like to support the channel directly, you can join my Patreon for just $1 a month. It really helps keep the content coming, and I'd greatly appreciate it. Thanks for watching. I'll see you guys in the next one.